And we'll go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover in just one short little hour. It will go by fast. But welcome and thank you all for coming. I know these after school PDs or trainings aren't always the easiest to attend. But we hope that you get a lot out of this today. We do want to mention that, as I've kind of said in the emails and in the invite, it is going to be a model lesson. You're going to see tons of strategies today and tons of tools. And we by no means expect that you're going to use all of them. We're just hoping you take at least one thing away today that maybe you can use with this new Imagine Reading curriculum. So if you haven't signed in or gotten into Imagine Reading, just keep on going with that. I'm going to get us started though. And I want to start off by talking a little bit about the curriculum resources that we have available for Imagine Reading. We have a great group of curriculum writers. Some of them are in here today. So we have Rachel Barrett at MLK. We have Kelly Munka at Eastway, and then Gwendolyn Quadri also at Eastway, taking a break right now, but they have all been helping us build or really building all these curriculum materials. So I'm going to do a little, show you where you can find these materials in the PACE toolkit. They are kind of like extra materials just to enhance your Imagine Reading curriculum. So if you were to go into the PACE toolkit and go to curriculum resources, Catherine, I see things coming in the chat, so just let me know if I ever need to stop.
Oh, you're good. It's just me.
Perfect. Okay. If you go and then click on middle school curriculum, sorry, I ended that a little too fast. So right down here at the bottom, you scroll down and click middle school curriculum, and then scroll down again until you see Imagine Reading here. And then you're going to see 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Currently, we have Unit 2 in here. There might be a few things for Unit 1, but really we kind of started with most of the resources for Unit 2. So if you were to go into Unit 2, click on a lesson, you're going to see a lot of resources in here, including slides for your power sentence lesson already created for you. You're going to see some expert jigsaw activities. You're going to see those texts amplified in a document, different activities like observation charts, vocabulary support, vocabulary anticipatory guides, quick writes. So I definitely encourage you to go and check these things out when you have some time. We are going to be using them today in kind of a digital format. So you'll kind of get an idea of what those might look like in action. All right, so those are all in the PACE toolkit for you under curriculum resources. Please check them out in your own time, or of course your resource teacher would be happy to walk through those with you. All right, so the next thing we want to do is talk a little bit about Pear Deck, and I'm not going to present my screen right now. We love Pear Deck. We know some of you use Pear Deck in your lessons, or you might use Nearpod for your lessons. We love these two different engagement tools because they are both great for remote and in-person learning. So great when you're on Zoom with the kids, or they're going to be great when you go back to in-person, especially because they're still going to have to be 6 feet away from each other. They can be used for live or student self-paced learning. So you could use them synchronously or asynchronously. And it's super, super easy to add it to your slides. Now I'm going to show you what you will need to do if you don't have it, is you are going to have to go to add-ons in your Google Slides and go to get add-ons, and you simply just search Pear Deck. And this always takes a little bit of time, so we might not be able to show you all of that. But if you've never done this, go to add-ons, get add-ons, and it should come up for you to search here. So it's coming up right here for me, but you could also, if it's not, just search Pear Deck. Mine is installed. It's going to ask you, you'll click on it, install it. Once that gets installed, it will show up right up here on your toolbar for you. So of course, my computer is acting super slow today. Well, hopefully we'll get this up. So when you click Pear Deck, it will come up over here to the right. And this is where you're going to add your different features. Some great things, some great easy features to do are a text box. So if you want to ask students a question and they answer it in writing for you, that comes up right there. You can give them multiple choice questions. There's like some sort of number, they have to guess a number. You would ask them a question. It's great for math. You can embed websites, you're going to see that. Students can draw or type on some slides. And there is this draggable feature where they drag a little dot or a star somewhere on there. Now, these two are premium features, but little secret, I have gotten premium over and over the free trial. For some reason, you can just keep asking for that free trial. They never seem to check your email. So if it's saying that these are premium, just Google Pear Deck Premium trial, and you should be able to get all those features for free. It says 60 days, but once my 60 days are up, I do it again. I don't know if that's because of this pandemic or what, but I'm going to keep doing it until they tell me I can't. Another great thing you can do is add audio. You'll notice in our power sentence lessons, we add audio so you could read it aloud for the students, especially if they're doing like a self-paced lesson. That's a great feature. And the template library, if you were to click up there, there's great different activities for beginning the lesson, during the lesson, and end of the lesson. Good for bell ringers and do nows, different like check-ins and assessments, and then reflections and exit tickets. They also, I know we have an emphasis on social emotional learning. They have some templates already created for you in here. And then if you keep going down, you're going to see like there are templates for math, science, social studies, world languages. I think the last one's kind of covered. Yep, ELA. So explore that. Lots of great things, and you're going to see some of that today as well. Last thing, in order to get your Pear Deck started, be very careful. You never want to click present on your slides. You have to start your lesson in Pear Deck. So you have to click this green button that says start lesson. That's one thing that I've seen often that people goof up. So make sure you click it in Pear Deck to start your lesson. It's going to pop up here for me, and I'll have a code to give you in just a second. So here's the student pace. Here's the instructor pace. We're going to do instructor pace. We're going to do real time. So it syncs the presentation with Pear Deck. It's going to give me a code. So you could have the students go to joinpd.com, or you just give them a code, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. What's coming up right here too is my teacher dashboard. This is going to give me my specific data on which students are doing things or not. When I'm teaching live and I'm showing answers, it's always anonymous, so kids never see it. But there is a teacher dashboard where you can see specifically what some students are doing. So that's what's trying to load. Let's see, and then here, this is where you would click to give the students the code. So it's copied to my clipboard, or they go to joinpd.com and you give them this code. So I'm going to throw this one in the chat. That should be easier. If you click on that, you should be able to join. You have 4 students connected. All right, here we go. Just waiting on a few more. All right, and I'll let you continue to join that. Students can join at any time as long as they have the code or the link. So if a student comes in late, all they need is that link or code. Okay, so we're going to start off with our first question, and we're just kind of curious to know who is already using Pear Deck or Nearpod in their lessons, and maybe sometimes you're using it, never, or maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. So go ahead. If you're in Pear Deck, it should be popping up to the right of your screen. Make sure you are in your Pear Deck lesson and not looking at the Zoom screen. And just curious, who is already using Pear Deck? Oh, awesome. We have 5 people using it all the time, 3 sometimes, 3 never, 1, it's the first time they're hearing about it. This is good. So we're kind of a little bit all over the board, but I love to see that most of us are using it all the time. So this is not new to a lot of you. All right. Hopefully you maybe get to see something, a way to use it differently. And yes, Nearpod too, right? Nearpod's another great one. We tend to use Pear Deck just because it's so easy with slides. Nearpod has made it much easier to use with slides as well, but Pear Decks don't need to go out of anything. It's that easy. All right, so we're going to jump into our model lesson. So for today, we're going to only do days 1 and then 3 through 5. We're going to skip day 2, which is our power sentence lesson. Just because we've talked about power sentence lessons a lot, we can absolutely go through that with you another time. Today, we're just going to kind of skip it. So we want to make sure we get to the writing piece at the end. We are going to focus on an 8th grade lesson. It is in Unit 2, desserts. It's not just for breakfast anymore. So it's that unit. And we're on Lesson 4, which is the science and art of food. So maybe you've taught it, maybe it's coming up, but this is what we're going to use for our model lesson today. So starting with day 1, our intro to the lesson, I'm going to ask that you kind of take on the role of a student right now. There will be times that we kind of pop out of that role, but kind of just take on that role of a student. All right, so your first thing is an entrance ticket. So in a minute, you're going to go to a Jamboard. We're going to put that in the chat box for you. There are 2 pictures that each have a picture on them, 2 pages that each have a picture on them. For each picture, we want you to write at least one thing you notice and one thing you wonder, and be prepared to share with the class. So I think Catherine just threw that in the chat box for you. You're still looking at Jamboard, if our Pear Deck, I'm sorry. This is what Jamboard looks like if this is new to you. So what you'll do is, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to click that little sticky note button that you see that arrow pointing to. That's how you add a sticky note. Write at least one thing you notice and one thing you wonder for each picture. To get to the second picture, you hit the arrow up at the top of the screen. All right, so we're going to give you a minute to kind of tell us one thing you notice and one thing you wonder about each picture. And feel free, you don't need to go in order. You can start on either picture. All right, just for purposes of time, would anyone like to share for picture number 1, something they notice and something they wonder, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself?
I wrote because I really embraced the be a student.
Mhm.
I wonder if there's anything underneath the chef's hats.
That's the one I left. I love that question. Waiting for a rat under there.
Ratatouille.
Yes. Love it. I see some others. I see a lot of chefs. I notice chefs preparing food. I wonder if they are student chefs. I wonder what they are preparing food for. For the second picture, I notice a beautiful cake. I see a big purple cake. I notice cake and I wonder if it's for a wedding. I wonder what this cake is for. I wonder if it was inspired by Hawaii. So again, you'd probably want some of your students sharing those answers, but at least they're participating in this Jamboard, kind of starting to think about what the topic might be about. All right, we are going to move on. So go ahead back to your Pear Deck. Another thing, so we won't do that this time, but you might want to have your students, and this is in Canvas, agreeing and disagreeing with each other or adding on to each other's, right? Just how can they add on to each other's what they wrote on there. I also noticed this, or did you see this, right? Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is a quick write. And you're going to, using the pictures and the title of our lesson, which is The Science and Art of Food, I want you to answer this question. What do you think you will be reading about in this article? And there is a sentence starter there for you. And I want you to go ahead in your Jamboard, go ahead and answer that. You guys are experts. I see you're already answering in there. I noticed, I think, was that Elsie in there? Also adding another picture instead of typing. Yeah, that can help as well. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's because sometimes I have newcomers. So sometimes when I ask, like, type something, they are like lost or they do it a lot in Spanish. So I said, for example, if it is about food, I would say like, add a picture of your favorite food.
Love
so
it.
this is a way like to them to participate without typing everything in English.
Yeah, I like it.
And that help.
Yeah. Something else you could do too is you could anticipate some things they'd say. So cake, right? You might have some vocabulary support on the slide, right? So if you want to see, I noticed cake, I noticed purple cake, I noticed things like that. That's another way to support. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So I think I will be reading about how science and food are related, reading about food and where it comes from, reading about people decorating food, how to prepare different types of desserts, how chefs turn food into works of art. Love it. Again, you can have some students, if they don't feel like typing, they can unmute and share out instead.
Now, when I was writing, I couldn't see what the other people were writing.
Correct. So what you would need to do, that is something with Pear Deck, you would have to say, come back to my screen to see the other students' answers. Another thing you could do is kind of like read it aloud like I did and say, Emma, do you agree or disagree with that? And why, right? But yeah, that is one thing with Pear Deck. You do need to ask them to come back.
Because I love that in Nearpod, they can see each other's writings. And sometimes like the newest comers will copy,
yes,
or at least get some ideas, but okay.
Yes, yeah, that is a great feature of Nearpod. Nearpod definitely has a little bit more features for sure. All right, so if you have to, we know some of you need to use Canvas. If that's the case, this is the exact same activity in Canvas. So instead of doing it in Pear Deck, there it is in Canvas for the students. You just direct them to do it in there. Want to make sure that we're touching on that as well. All right, we're not actually going to do this activity, but this would be a viewing with a focus. So watching the video from the lesson, playing it on your screen. So you would, again, need to invite the students to come back to your screen to watch that video, and then think about the question, how are science and food connected in this video? So I would invite them back to my Zoom screen and have it available on Imagine Reading for them to view. Oh, and it's not gonna let me. But we're gonna just kind of skip that one for today. You would have them respond to this question. This one is a multiple choice question, and feel free to choose one even though you might not know the answer. Students would choose their multiple choice answer, and then, since it's multiple choice, to get students kind of talking, why did you choose the answer that you did? What is the evidence from the video? And again, I can kind of take a look, and it looks like you guys know the answer to this. This video explains how science has helped cookie dough evolve, as our experts. Again, same activity in Canvas. It just looks a little bit different. Okay, now we're going to do a vocabulary anticipatory guide, which is not something you have seen in Canvas before. I am going to credit Rachel Barrett, and she had been using this in her class, and we loved it. So it is a amplified material you will find in the PACE toolkit. So just to introduce some vocabulary. So we're going to learn some new vocabulary this week. Before we do, I want to show you which words you know. I want to see which words you know or have heard of and which ones that you haven't. So we'd go through the vocabulary. I'd say chemistry. Have you ever heard of this word? Do you know this word? Have you never heard of this word? And just get a pulse on whether students have heard it or not. So they can choose their option on the side and kind of just to get an idea of where students are at in terms of these words. Molecules, and you just go through all of them. Culinary, sculpture, kind of just going through, not talking about them too much, that will come later on. And then finally ending with an exit ticket. So based on today's activities, what are some questions that you have so far? And again, that is another Canvas activity. This is just how it's showing up in Pear Deck. All right, that's the end of day one. I'm going to move on to day 3. We're going to skip day 2, like I mentioned before. All right, pass it over to Catherine.
All right, everybody. So we are going to get started on our day 3, which we'll be doing some close reading today. We'll start off by having you answer this entrance ticket. So it says, as we have discussed, the title of this lesson text is The Science of Art and Food, Art of Food, sorry. How might we use science and art when we cook? Write your explanation in 1 to 2 sentences, and please use those sentence starters to help you with your response. And so again, if you switch back, another thing to recommend to your students, I know this might be kind of challenging at first, but maybe sharing your screen and modeling how to open up 2 windows so they can toggle back and forth. If you haven't done that already, I know some teachers have. So like, for example, right now, if I were to share my screen, I have half of my screen with the Zoom, half with the presentation. It's just easier to see both because I like to see both. But if, that can be a little advanced for some students, so just use your judgment. But that's just another way of getting around being able to see 2 things at one time. It can be helpful, especially when you're teaching and you need to have them to go to Canvas or Imagine Reading or whatever else. Just a little side note there. But we do have some responses. So if you switch back over to the Zoom screen, we can see that some people are writing. An example is we might use science while cooking by experimenting with different ingredients and how they do different things in food. We might use art while cooking by decorating baked goods with different designs. Love it. We might use science while cooking by measuring temperatures of the food, and we might use art while cooking by decorating foods such as cakes. And we might use science while cooking using chemicals. I like that vocabulary choice. All right. So our learning targets for today, I know we've been doing a lot of the talking, so can I just have a volunteer unmute and read those learning targets for us, please?
I can complete a first read of the text to determine what I already know about the topic and questions I have. I can complete a second read of the text to answer text-dependent questions.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Appreciate you. All right, so now this is your opportunity. If you haven't logged into Imagine, it should pop up for you to log in, or if you're already logged in, it should have you jump right to the screen. So I'll give you a minute or two, or 30 seconds to try to log in real quick. But if you logged in the beginning, it should pop up, which is a really great feature. So it takes students directly to the text.
One thing we've noticed as we've been visiting classes is some students the teachers are telling them to log in. Sometimes if you don't have Dino, it's hard to know if they are. This just helps them. It's right there for them, right? As long as they're in Pear Deck, it's coming up for them. The directions are right there. Should make it a little bit easier for them to log in.
And literally all we did was we took the link. So let's say I go directly to the text and I go to the passage. The link at the top is what you would copy and paste, not the login screen. So they skip all of those steps. So if they're not logged in, once they do log in, it takes them directly to where you want them to go, which is really convenient.
Yeah.
Copy and paste.
Yep, copy and paste. You got
Copy,
it.
paste, yep.
All right, so we're going to move on to, we're going to preview the text by scanning. And so we're going to do a notice and wonder protocol. Remember, scanning is we're just going to look over quickly over the text. And side note, I want to just shout out Miss Munoz. She did amazing. I was able to visit her class this week, and she walked students through this so well and modeled how to scan the text. Sometimes we assume that the kids know how to do it, and she really went through each section, and it was very brief, but a really great model. So sometimes, you might want to take time to do that just to make sure they know the difference between scanning and reading. So yes, good job, Miss Munoz. All right. And so on the next screen, you'll have an opportunity to put your notice and wonderings. And so of course that would be the reminder to me as a teacher to go back to the text and model what that would look like, or have them do that on their own, depending on their level and where they're at and where their comfort is.
And how many times you've done it too, right?
Right. Yep. Because this is a pretty repetitive activity that you probably have seen throughout different lessons as you progress through the curriculum. So again, it's okay to reset and go back to the basics and do some modeling if you have to. Let's go ahead and use those sentence starters and pop your responses in your Pear Deck.
And for some reason, it's not allowing me to show the responses. Sorry, Catherine.
That's okay. We'll just pretend that we went back. And if that happens, sometimes it's okay to refresh your screen or have your students unmute and read what they wrote. And for those students who may be afraid to type a response, they could read one of their classmates' responses if they want, or again, unmuting using those sentence starters. All right, so we're going to move on to our next piece, and this is after scanning, of course. And so we're going to answer this question. What is the author trying to teach you? Write one sentence in the box below, and you'll notice there's a sentence starter to support you. And what's nice about this is that if you're looking at your Pear Deck screen, you'll see the screenshot of the question, and you have the text right in front of you, so you can actually scroll And students can actually match where they see it. So, oh, I need to go to the first question, and they're able to compare just as an easier way for navigation purposes. So that is where you can have them enter in their responses. And then for those teachers who use Dino, which is such a great monitoring tool, you'll be able to make sure that that is exactly where they're supposed to be. And they can answer directly in Pear Deck. So go ahead and do that.
Always remind them to click submit. An extra reminder on here probably would be good too.
So I'm a little bit confused of like, where is my text that I'm supposed to be looking at?
Are you looking in Pear Deck or are you on Zoom?
I don't know anymore. I'm like, holy cow. I mean, I have Zoom right here on this screen up top, and then down here, I feel like I'm in Pear Deck. I see where I'm supposed to write the author. I see it on the left, but I just.
And if you scroll down, this is where, so we skipped over this part, but when you keep scrolling down, there's the text. It's right there for you.
It's right
And
there.
yep, if you just keep scrolling down, that's the text that the students are responsible for scanning, and you can do it together. You can actually have them switch over to your screen, and you can be the person who's controlling that, like Chelsea is right now if you switch back to Zoom. You just keep scrolling down, and that's where you'll see the text. Or an additional option, if you feel the text is a little bit too advanced for them and they need additional supports, we do have these texts engineered in a separate document, which is located in the PACE toolkit. So there's a couple ways you can approach it, but I would definitely share your screen and walk through with them rather than having them do that independently, unless if they're at that point.
Yep, I have a question.
Sure.
This is like where you were showing is directly in Imagine Reading, or there is a way to put this individually to put this individually in Nearpod or in this Pick Deck. I don't know, because yeah, sometimes like I try to use I am using the Imagine Reading, but yeah, I don't know how to be sure. Besides that, I know like they are actually answering. When I go to the grading, I realize that just one student did the activity. So for me, it would be awesome if I can take part of this and put it in one slide and say, okay, we're going to read this one, everybody click on. But I see like if you put just that part in Pick Deck, I don't know.
Pear Deck, yep.
So how did you do that?
So all we did was we took a screenshot, and you are welcome to chunk the text that way too. If you think it's better to put it on slides because you have a little bit more control, you can just use it directly from your screen. But we use the snipping tool, and we just snip pictures directly from Imagine Reading.
And Ms. Rice, we're happy to kind of stay on for a second, and Catherine can kind of show you too, what it looks like in the Pear Deck screen. We'll have her share and what that all looks like and how to do that as well. We can show you all of that.
Happy to, absolutely. But I know seeing what's on the other side of the screen has been a really big hurdle for a lot of us as teachers. And so I do know if you use Dino, that is really a great monitoring tool. So you can see if the kids are following along, and you can help the certain ones that you see. It is pretty much on real time. I know it takes a few minutes, like a minute or two to update sometimes, but or you can have them share their screen too. That's another way to see and make sure they're in the right place.
Even if it takes an entire class, like sometimes it's just worth it to have each student share their screen and make sure they can log in.
Yep. And if you need to take the time to do that, absolutely, because that's going to set you up for success to make sure they know how to navigate Imagine Reading. So definitely, again, it's never too late to do a reset with them and walk them through the platform if they're struggling with that. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to move on.
That was the question one. So the second one.
Okay, perfect. So now, again, we're not going to do this just for the sake of time, but this would be a listening with the focus. This is something that we have asked them to do in Canvas as well. But if you are doing this lesson synchronously and they're with you, then you would want to read the text with them, have them volunteer. You can use some of the voice that you can play it for them however you want to do it, but you want to really have them pay attention to what the text is mostly about, because it will connect to day 5 with the writing. So that's really, really important. And usually most of the writings, you do want to have them know what the gist is in order for them to be set up. So with this, we thought it would be a little bit easier for you to have it multiple choice versus having them continue to write a response. That's just a support added for them to make it a little bit easier. So if you switch to your Pear Deck screen, you should see 3 different options to determine what the text is mostly about. And if you don't know, it's okay, you can take a guess. No worries, safe space. And so this would be a great teaching point to talk about why they selected this answer, what were some key features in the text that they noticed as they were listening, scanning, and so on.
And talking about like key details versus like the main idea, right? This would be a great teaching moment for that as well.
Absolutely, connecting that. And Mr. Harris, I'm not sure if he's on here or not, but he did a really nice job with connecting the gist and central idea and how it's all connected. You can never go wrong with getting to that, absolutely. All right, so the next screen, it just shows the Canvas version where it can actually walk the students through on how to listen to the article if it's asynchronous or if they're doing this independently. So that's another option, and you'll see is the same questions, but you can type it and have them submit it in Canvas. So you definitely have a lot of options there. All right, so this next piece we added in, and this is focusing on vocabulary. And so put your student hats back on real quick, and we're going to walk you through this. We're just going to do one word for the sake of time. All right, so we are going to focus on the word chemistry. Chemistry pops up a lot throughout the text. So I need everyone to repeat after me. So if you're muted, please unmute yourself and repeat after me. Chemistry.
Chemistry.
Wonderful. Chemistry is a science that deals with the structure and properties of substances with the changes that they go through. So when I think of chemistry, I want to do something that is going to help me remember what it means. And we may have taken a chemistry class before, and we're going to see it in the text and how it shows up, but we're going to do a move. This is called total physical response. And so you could have the students actually come up with the move for them, but chemistry might be a hard one. So we could say, looking at the picture, I see a couple different beakers. And when I pour some solutions together, I get a reaction. So everyone do the movement with me. We're going to take our 2 beakers and pour them in together, and we have a reaction. So every time you hear the word chemistry, remember that move to help you remember what it means. Focus on that word changes. And so now that we've remembered our word chemistry, and so when we see it in the text, we're going to remember what that word means, and we're going to make a connection to the text. So we screenshotted a piece of the text, and so the text says, and you can have a student read out, but I'll go ahead for time. Chemistry plays a huge part in the process, Turcotte says. For instance, 2 fruits may taste delicious separately, but you can combine them. But if you combine them, they must have compatible enzymes or the flavor will be unpleasant. So I have a question for you. Have you ever used chemistry with food? Did you combine 2 foods? Was it pleasant or unpleasant? You have some sentence starters there for you, and please respond. Either you can unmute using the sentence starters, or you can use your Pear Deck. So we have some answers being typed out. I have used chemistry with food with vinegar and baking soda. Wow, I wonder what happened with that. I use when I have made salad dressings. I use chemistry when I mix. Excellent. So you can shout out some of those answers. Jello, yeah, that's what I said earlier to Chelsea. States of matter. Yeah, so very cool. Awesome. So what we wanted to do with this activity was just pulling it out from the text and then having the students connect to it, bring their own experiences. And we know our students have a lot of experiences probably with cooking with their families, because that is a huge part of culture. So we really wanted to make it personal for them. and hopefully they'll remember what chemistry means. And so you would do the same process going through the other words, and we do have some ideas for you in the notes in our slide deck that could be a TPR move. It's fun to let the kids come up with it, but sometimes they get stuck and you want to have a backup plan. So that also will help with engagement. We know that those cameras like to stay off sometimes, but you know, some rooms that I have been in and Chelsea's been in, we've seen a lot of teachers create that culture where teachers want to see their students. And so it might be an issue for some teachers and maybe not, but if they have their cameras off, that's out of your control. At least you can hopefully that they will be doing it behind the black screen. So you model it, you continue it, and praise the kids that are following along.
Okay, so the next part is the second read. So the first read was kind of that preview of the text, hearing it, and then going over the vocabulary, because that was vocabulary that was mentioned over and over again. This is something they see in Canvas, and this goes really well with the engineered text. Now, following this annotating guide in imagined reading would be difficult. You can't quite do all these things. So we're going to do it a little bit differently. And we would use things more like this. So as you're kind of reading through, you're going to use that highlight tool and imagine reading. And what you're going to do is when you highlight something and it's something you understand or know about, I want you to write a smiley face in the comment box. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Write a question mark if it's something you don't understand. If there's a word and you can use context clues to figure out the meaning of it, write the meaning in a comment box. Or there's always the dictionary tool to look up unknown words. So that's what we want you to do for the second read. Now, I would model this first as the teacher. So I'm going to invite you to all come back to my Zoom screen and just kind of show you what this would look like. So if I'm going through and I see laboratory, and I've heard of a laboratory, right? Or it's a cognate to me. I might highlight it and say, I know what that is. My comment box comes up on the right-hand side and I draw a smiley face. I know this and I save it. It doesn't have to be a smiley face. It can be whatever you want. But I know kids know how to use those smiley faces. And then it's talking about combinations of chemicals in foods. And that to me might be confusing. So I highlight that and I write a little question mark. If you want kids to ask questions, have them ask questions. Take notes, have them write notes. This is just a simple way for them to kind of go through. If they're going through and you want them to highlight a word and use the dictionary tool to look up a word, if you haven't used that before, that is there as well.
So Chelsea, you're doing that highlighting on Imagine Reading, or you're doing that highlighting on Pear Deck right now? No, you're on Imagine Reading.
I'm in Imagine Reading. Mm-hmm. Yes.
See, this is where I have a hard time, because they would be in Imagine Reading doing on their account. So how am I going to see, you know what I'm trying, like, how am I going to see what they're highlighting?
Right. So what will happen is you can see here, I'm in Cochrane Collegiate Academy. I'm not sure if she has done this yet at Cochrane. If I go to my grading, now I don't know how it works live time. You would have to maybe use Dino for live time. I can hear my students show up over here. I click on a student. For some reason, it's being a little funny for me. It's possible they haven't done it, and maybe that's why it's not allowing me to do that right now. But it should allow me to choose a student. I don't think they've done the lesson yet.
So you're saying go back and look at what each student
did. It would
did.
have to be after the lesson. Yes. Yep. But again, like, this is me just modeling it. So they shouldn't be doing anything. They should just be watching me do it. And then they're going to help me do it. And then they're going to go back to their text and do it on their own. So yes, after the lesson, that's when you'd go check, and you should be able to see what they highlight. Anything they highlight, any of their comments will come up for you if they've completed it.
I have a question about this. When we are reading during the lesson, they have to complete like all the questions in the lesson so I can grade. I can do the grade part, or it could be like, okay, today we're going to do the two first paragraphs. Click on submit. Can I just grade these two?
If you can tell them to just do two, yeah. Yeah,
'Cause
so
I
if
tried.
they only do these two,
Uh-huh.
their responses are going to come up there once you're able to click on a student.
Because
Um,
I did this one this week,
uh-huh,
and the only one that I could grade for, it was the student who at homework she completed every single section.
right,
So I was able to grade that part, but the others they just did like the first two parts, and I couldn't grade anything from
right.
them.
So that is tricky. So if you need to put some of those questions into Pear Deck, if that's going to be easier for you, or into Canvas. This was not created for a remote environment, right? It was created for in-person where a teacher's kind of working with them. So if that's the case, make it work for you, absolutely. And as students learn the platform a little bit more, they'll get better. It's going to be much easier when we get in person.
Elsie, I have a question.
Yes, can we have 10
somehow-
minutes, Nancy.
Oh, okay.
Can we hold? I want to just make sure we get through a couple more things, go through a couple things, and then Catherine and I are going to stay on for questions. Is that okay with everyone? Just make sure I kind of go through these. I think, Catherine, let's just stop after lesson 3, and then we can continue next time. Perfect. Okay. So then we'd have the students do a we do together. So they'd help me with that, and then a try on your own. And that's where they do it, Imagine Reading. Finally, for day 3, they need to go and answer those comprehension questions like we talked about. The idea for this is to send them into breakout rooms to work on this together. Now, again, they have to answer on their own Imagine Reading platform if that's where you want them to answer, right? But they're at least working together and can come up with those answers, then come back to the main room and discuss them. And finally, just ending the class with what are 2 things that you learned today? All right. I definitely don't want to rush day 4 and 5, so I think we're going to stop there. We'll tell you an opportunity when we can continue this if you're available to join, but we will record it as well. That way we can get to all your questions today too. So I'm going to kind of skip on down through day 4 and 5. And Catherine, I'll start it on this one and start to wrap it up.
Yeah, so I know that you only saw days 1 and 3, but we still feel like you can definitely answer these questions. So thinking back on what you did see, think about these questions. How were these tasks supported for English learners? How would they be challenging for English learners? And what language supports did you notice? You can respond in the Pear Deck, or you can feel free to unmute and share out your thoughts. And again, while you are typing those things, I do want to remind you again, this can be a lot, but we wanted to share as many ideas as we could with you today to help with that engagement. We know that is a struggle, and I know you all are working so hard during this difficult time. And even if it's Pear Deck, or if it's using Google Slides, or even just using Imagine Reading as your platform and walking them through. There's tons of ways you can do this, so just remember that. But we want to make sure that this is rigorous material, and we know that we want to give students all access to that, and there's just ways to get them there through the supports. So that's just a little side note. But we can take a look at.
See Pear Deck used with students all the time. So they love it. It's a great way to engage them. And they're going to catch on. These kids know how to use this technology.
Yeah, that's true. And Also, it really is, if you need a reset, I know I've said that over and over, but it's okay to do that and do those things. And so some people are saying, let's see, we have the tasks were supportive, and that seemed to condense the materials while not risking the rigor. The tasks were challenging because of the pace and demands of each task. And we know your pacing is, it is day by day. So you see these kids every other day. And so we definitely have a lot of grace with that. And it is challenging to get through the material, and that's okay. This is the first time we're rolling this out, and it's trial and error. So you definitely have flexibility.
And we didn't buy this thinking it was going to be remote. So
Yeah, exactly.
that was not the thought when this got purchased.
Yeah, so this is something that you definitely want to be able to walk students through, and it's hard to do that with virtual learning, but it's possible. It is definitely possible. Modeling was helpful. I know I saw something in the chat. One thing I noticed about Imagine Reading is that you cannot view students' answers unless they submit and all the questions and press send to teacher. Yeah, that is definitely one thing to note.
So if that's the challenge and you just want to do it off Imagine Reading, we completely understand that. And then it's later on, you go back to Imagine Reading, that's okay too. We want the students doing the learning, right?
So
Absolutely.
So I've been doing a lot of that. I've used it. I enjoy the text. I think they're great. I think they're age appropriate. I like it, but my challenge has been, the platform itself. I've been using, and not even Canvas. To me, in order to have control and be able to see live the kids, I've been using it in a shared folder. And, I put the kids in their own paper, and I kind of look at their work as we're going, or we're looking at my screen as we're reading. So I'm having a really hard time trying to use the platform so that if there is any sort of use it or lose it mentality, I feel bad. I feel like I have to get the kids on there, like as quick as I can. But now you told me about the snippet, because right now I've noticed, we don't really have any more access to the stories on Canvas as we used to at the beginning. Now it's we're trying to get the kids directed into the actual platform. But I feel like, well, now that you said I can snip the screen, do a screenshot. I wonder if I'll do it that way. Well, no, because I was, before I could just highlight it, copy, paste it into a document, and then put a copy of it in each of the students' folders. And then, I could go in and see how they answered. I see, if they responded after I responded, if they went into their own document, I could comment on it. I could, that's the way I was functioning. So I'm just having a hard time transitioning from that I was doing for the first half to now trying to push the kids into, okay, like, wait a second, now we got to get all this done in the Imagine Reading platform. Is that a requirement that you guys want of us? I hear no. I hear that I can continue being creative with the material, but I don't want, I don't want us to lose it as a department if it doesn't show like my students are logging in to use it. I'm using it as a teacher, as a resource to teach the kids.
So we can still see that students are working in it, whether or not they are completing like entire lessons in there. We can still see the time. I'm going to continue with that in just a second. I want to make sure we get through a few more things. But as always, we want to make sure students are learning, right? So let's not put up the barriers. It's more about let's make sure we take down the barriers. So we want it to work for the students for sure. So our next training is going to be February 24th or 25th, excuse me. Please know that these are always optional, although we highly encourage you to come. We are going to ask that you bring a student work sample from Imagine Reading, because we're going to start to talk about how to look at student work samples and grade them. The new WIDA standards just came out, and kind of starting to discuss, well, how do we grade these student work samples, writing or speaking, using those rubrics. And that is from 4 to 5. I will continue to send the calendar invites. We also want to tell you, and this is where we're going to complete that lesson. On Thursdays from 4 to 5, it's not going to be every Thursday. It's going to be about 2 Thursdays a month. We are going to do an ELD virtual office hours. So I think next week what we'll do is finish the lesson, but this is also a time where we can help you plan out your lessons. or help you build things, or if you have any questions about the platform, about anything that has to do with ELD, we can help you answer them here. So the document should be coming up for you on the right with the dates that is open. We try to do 4 to 5 because we know that's a little bit easier of a time for middle school. And the whole focus is just language progress monitoring. So whether it's building lessons to support that, to build up their language progress, right? Or to grade student work samples, that's our focus. I'm going to send this in an email as well. And last thing is the evaluation. So if you would just complete that before you go, and then Catherine and I are here to answer all the questions now. I just want to make sure we got through that.
Yes, and keep the questions coming. It's really important, and also to collaborate with one another to see what's working and listening to different ideas.
Can you put it in the chat?
Yeah. Right, there it is. We should also be having a meeting with Imagine Reading soon, and I'm going to bring up the concern about the students having to complete the entire lesson. That actually, I don't know that they ever told me that. So without having had having a student in there, I did not realize that. So I'm definitely going to bring up that concern to them for sure, because I can see how that can be a frustration.
I agree, because when we're in the platform and I practice and submit the answers, it submits and grades it for me immediately if it's multiple choice. So like, and it goes by question by question. So that was great feedback. Thank you.
I do have a comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we are doing like the lessons, even the Canvas, I really enjoy when we're doing the power sentence, because there's a script that you can kind of follow along. But then for the rest of the questions, there's not, I mean, it's all to the discretion of the teacher to, and that's the only thing I have found a little bit of lacking in because, for example, when we're talking about author's point of view, I would like to know what is the trajectory that they want me to go to. You know what I mean? Because each teacher has a different, they can see things on different glasses. You know what I mean? So that was my question. So I know that there are resources into the in the PACE, and but I went there and there is kind of a guide of what you are doing and what the standards are, but not necessarily kind of a prompt to lead you into really the instructional time with the students. The only thing I see is the power sentence is very well put together, and you can go back and refer back to that. But once you are done with that, what about the rest?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because I have felt that as I've built these lessons out in Canvas and things. So I'm just going to write it down as another concern that I will bring up with Imagine Reading. See if are they ever going to put out any sort of teacher guide? Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
I will definitely ask that as well.
I think that is very important, because you want to, it is.
I agree. Yep. Because I'm like, well, I think the main idea is this. Hopefully. Yeah.
And we use a lot of ELD education resources to really connect those. It's the same standard. So how is ELD education? All kids are required to be using ELD education in their ELA classes. So that's another resource I know we use to pop in there to make those connections. So it's not like, here's this way to find the main idea, but a different way to find the main idea to really help with that. So if there's a specific skill, definitely let us know and we can help you with that.
Yeah. I am not referring more to the skill, because you are right. That's especially because I co-teach as well. So I understand the correlation, but still ELA teachers are teaching the skills, but they still have a guide on where to take the kids when they have their answers. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. not necessarily
agree.
the skills. It's not the skills, it's where do you want me to go? Where is the,
Yep. And how do you build on those that questioning?
Exactly.
And
Because some of
yes.
the questions are like, okay, but I'm looking at this and the kids are saying something else. So it is vague a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
I'll bring that up. That's a great,
my
yes, thank
concern.
you.
Yes.
Okay, I just had two
Yes,
things
ma'am.
on my mind. The first thing was the annotations. When the students go to
Mhm.
imagined reading, and I just didn't think about this before. Will we be able to see them making those annotations on imagined reading when we
So-
are grading their work?
I was under the impression you could, because again, I'm seeing it from my view. Now, with everyone saying that they have to submit everything, it makes me wonder. Nancy, do you
Yeah.
know if there's a lesson you've taught before?
So for 8th grade, we have finished Central and South American languages. Not all of them are Spanish.
Okay.
We've covered that particular text, and right now we are at the baseball text because we're still working on that. We just started the first read.
I was gonna try to pull up your class here, but it's not as easy.
Yeah.
as
Oh
I
my,
thought it
there's
was
so
going
much
to
a mix up, and some of my kids are gone to data, and oh my goodness, I'm so sad because I really miss them now.
I
It's
know. My
crazy.
hope is that this is all just going to be a little easier when we're in person. It should be a lot easier, actually. I just want to pull up one student that completed this so I can see. No, if we can see those annotations, because I was curious about the same thing. Let's see if Barrett had any students in there.
I know Barrett, she was working on 8th grade. She just started unit 2, literally just started. So maybe if you look at unit 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because I was curious about the same thing. I was under the impression that yes, but now I'm wondering if maybe you can't.
Go to Life in Latin America, maybe.
I just have all my screens. Okay, let's go to Family Life in Mexico. If I go to my grading. I don't know why it is not letting me choose a student. I think it's just my internet right now. It's being weird. Because
I wonder if you go the way in the dashboard and go that route, where you can.
maybe. As we're trying to find this, are there any more questions?
Yeah, I have one more.
Go,
And,
Nancy, yes. I cut you off earlier.
I'm like so afraid of PEDIC, I think I have like an idea, but I'm just so afraid to put it into practice. But I just wanted to ask this question.
Yep.
So I want to share my screen, right? And I just